Welcome to the Angels Brief, the podcast series. We bring together the smartest minds in angel investing and ambitious startup founders to share their stories, insights, experience, and much more. The host for today's episode is Duran York, the CEO of Cityside Ventures and the co-founder of Birmingham Angels. So let's get to it.
I have a special guest in the studio here today, Phillip Swanson. Phillip is, we know each other for, a few years back. He's the head of venture development at Centrepolic Accelerator in Southfield, connected to LTU. Western Michigan grad with degree from MIT, if I get it right? Mastering design thinking and entrepreneurial studies. Service business development advisor for a few companies, including, one company in Stockholm, Sweden. I guess based on the name, there's some connection to Sweden. Expert in residence in, Industry 4.0 Accelerator in Southfield, among other endeavors in the startup ecosystem. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah. So we, the mission of this podcast that we started this year is to bring angel investing to the forefront of a lot of people here in the Michigan ecosystem. And we're bringing all the stakeholders that we know in the community in the startup ecosystem to talk about it. So the one thing that we definitely want to explore is, what is, the mission of Centrepolic and, what people need to know about HardTech development here in Michigan. So tell us about Centrepolic.
Yeah, Centrepolis Accelerator is kind of unique in the early stage investment realm. We have non-dilutive funding, but our real mission is to help early stage founders in the hard tech space build, engineer, and manufacture their products here in Michigan and the Midwest more broadly. And so, where a lot of other accelerators might focus just on kind of your mini CEO and training curriculum, we actually have in-house design, engineering, and design for manufacturing expertise to help those founders build something, but also build it efficiently with the right quality. So then that they're not going back and wasting capital, doing additional test runs, spending time to build tooling that eventually kind of craters the company when they find out they haven't necessarily built the right thing. So we take them through a standard or a design for validation process that any large corporate enterprise, many of us, who work at Centrepolis have 15, 20, 30 years of experience in those worlds. So we want to help, early stage founders avoid, all the mistakes that we made. And the other side of that mission too is then connecting, our Michigan manufacturing base and our OEMs and tier ones and tier twos with best in class technologies that help advance their innovation roadmaps.
That's great. And I know most of the people in Centropolis really cool people with, with a lot of innovative thinking. But the one thing we want to get clear to the people that are listening to us today, there's a kind of difference between hard tech and soft tech development, which is critical. From your point of view, what do you think hard tech development involve that it's different than soft tech development?
Yeah, so having developed both hard and soft products in my time, both in industry and outside of it, the biggest difference is your turn time to learning when you're doing iterations, right? So when you're developing a purely digital solution, whether it's a B2B SaaS or a consumer application, spinning up an AWS instance or adding some server capacity, right? Those are very kind of straightforward known quantities. How much it's going to cost. Hiring an engineer and your iterations in your development can be pretty rapid, from idea to prototype to actually deployed MVP. And the penalty you receive when you have a mistake isn't necessarily as high. And that's why, venture capital for the last, 15, 20 years has really loved, that software side of the business or software side of business is because the returns can be so high and then the capital goes so much further. In the hard tech space, the development times are longer, the resources needed to go from 0 to 1 are greater. But with that, you can potentially create a much larger moat when you do find a solution that has product market fit. And so our goal, on the hard tech side, is to help those founders, in the early stage, not spend too much money and be competitive in the cost and speed of learning perspective to their software only counterparts.
Right. Because, one of the things as an investor we always concern about when you're talking about hard tech development, it's, you know, it's capital, it's supply chain issues, it's inventories issue, it's warranties issue, it's a service issue. So there's many things that scares investors when you talk about hard tech investing, right? It's a little bit different than soft tech. Most of the investment go to marketing in anything, but this makes sense.
Yeah, no, I completely understand and agree. And as an investor, looking at hard tech, one thing that we go through in our due diligence process is, not only working at, product market fit, the team, potentially IP concerns, we're also looking at supply chain risks, design for manufacturability risk, product level innovation risk that we help them, kind of get across those technical gaps that might exist so that future investors like yourselves, when they look at the company and the questions and the risks that you might or concerns you might have around risks, around manufacturability or inventory turns, they have answers for those questions and they've thought about it. A lot of early stage hard tech founders, especially the ones that are first time founders that haven't been in industries before, they don't know some of those questions to answer or how to alleviate some of those concerns. They're really excited about technology, bringing it to market, the IP behind it, but those other business fundamentals that come into play with hard tech, they really need help getting coached up on, but also understanding you need to look 2, 3, 4 steps ahead because if you're wrong, the penalty for hard tech can be that much more severe than their soft tech counterparts.
Right. So when you bring me to the question, it's funny, before we kind of invite you to be on the show, so I did kind of informal kind of test talking to different people about try to understand if they know what resources are out there for hard tech development. And I found out that 90% of them don't know. So
Yep.
one issue we're trying to resolve here is like, we need to bring it to the know. So there is resources, there is accelerator for hard tech, there is some things you can do with your company. But the question I want to ask you, and it's maybe a rhetorical question, but when in the stage of the thinking process that entrepreneurs should say, okay, I should go to Centropolis or I should go to X before I go and spend 2 years trying to assemble everything on my own, and then when I go to Centropolis, I found out I have to re-engineer the whole thing from the beginning. What is the place that the moment in my innovation thinking that I say, okay, I need to find the Centropolis of the world?
I would say it's never too early to reach out. But when will we be able to help you is the different question, right? So
Right.
we're typically able to help companies when they get to, you can talk about technology readiness levels or commercialization readiness levels. I like to think of it as, hey, 3 different pieces, right? Prove there's a problem, prove there's a solution, and prove you can scale. We really are great, right after the founders kind of prove there's a problem, right? You've proven there's a market. You maybe even have some like very light, kind of Wizard of Oz type prototypes to prove that consumers would want this, and you've done some thinking around the design and engineering, and maybe even you've filed some utility early stage patents. But before or as you're moving in from like an alpha to a beta prototype stage, that's really when we're the best to engage because we can then come in and say, hey, we are understanding where you're thinking, how you're approaching the market, what your target consumer is, and then also we can help give you some direction, or we can help give founders direction in terms of how to design and engineer their product, all the way from, if you're looking at like an EV mobility company, for example, a lot of founders don't have chassis development experience, right? So we have chassis engineers we can get them connected with to help them understand, actually, what do I need to do to design something that's roadworthy and certifiable versus something that, yes, it can move, but as soon as it hits a pothole, it's going to fall apart, right?
Got it.
So that's really where we can provide that value is after the founder's like, I think I've got something and I want to spend a lot more time and money potentially trying to build it.
Great. So part of being responsible for venture development in Centropolis, So, what's your experience in terms of hard tech company raising early stage capital in Michigan? I'm saying it like with with quotations that we
Yeah.
know there's an issue, we know there's a problem, but we want the stakeholder to tell us what the
Yeah.
experience of raising early stage for hard tech.
Yeah, hard tech's, hard to raise money anywhere. In Michigan, we've got a long, history of investing in a lot of med tech, biotech, and B2B software as a service. And, our angel communities are really good at that. And so what we've tried to do is help our founders understand, how to approach individuals that have a little less experience on the hard tech side. And then also it's our responsibility to help build, more awareness and education around hard tech investment. And so we have a Michigan Manufacturers Angels group as well that meets at least once a quarter. We have our next meeting next week, Thursday the 13th at Centropolis. So if anybody's interested, we can send out a link to register for that. But ultimately, founders have to understand, they have to be in a mode of what I call is, always be raising, right? So you're never, as soon as you think you're closing your first round, you need to be thinking about closing the next round, because in this funding environment, it's hard enough for early stage software companies to raise money. So if you're a hardware based company business, you have to 1.5 times essentially that length. So just understand that you give yourself runway to close that next round, and understand that not every investor is going to be hard tech palatable, right? That's just not part of their thesis or profile. So don't be
Did you find
disappointed.
that, by the way, did you find that you mentioned the manufacturer angel group that you guys
Yep.
running? Do you find that uh, manufacturers or people that came from the manufacturing sector or people that invested in the hard tech before they're more prompt to look at hard tech investments as a strategic
Yeah, we
maybe?
actually Yeah, we're seeing it as a strategic, and then a lot of those family offices or second generation, third generation business owners and runners of these manufacturing businesses. 500 people or less, 1,000 people or less. They may be making 10, 15, 20, $30 million a year in revenue, so they have somewhat of a nest egg, and they want to start angel investing. They understand hard tech, right? They understand a little bit more. Their appetite for risk is a little higher. They're not going to be, writing extremely large multi-million dollar checks, but they are great, like first check, first avenue to get an angel round kicked off.
So I asked Dan a couple weeks ago when I met with him, and I want to get your perspective on it. Do you think that like Silicon Valley is kind of claimed the fame and seniority in terms of soft tech development in that's what Silicon Valley is all about. Do you believe that Michigan could become the hard tech center in the country?
I really do. And I was just meeting with a couple individuals, Peter Hill and Ben Marcioni, who you're probably familiar with
Hmm.
at MEDC, talking about this issue. And as we were having lunch, the conversation came around like, what do you think, what incentives would need to exist, or what would we need to do to attract more capital to Michigan? And I really think it's kind of that chicken or egg problem, right? Risk capital goes where the best companies are, and also, risk capital wants to have some sort of incentives to invest in those companies. Well, you need to have those companies first. So for us as an ecosystem to succeed, we need more concentration around helping empower hard tech entrepreneurs to build and manufacture their products here, similar to what Silicon Valley and others have done. Of you create that density, you create that serendipity, so that a founder comes here, they don't feel alone, right? So they can found their company. Even if they fail, there's another opportunity for them. And they're sharing that experience. And they're having those, serendipitous meetups or collisions with other entrepreneurs that can spark a new company. We're starting to see some of that happen to Detroit with New Lab, Michigan Central, Tech Town, and other entities where that natural kind of collection of individuals is happening. And we can see some of that developing at other hubs across the state, whether that's Grand Rapids, Kalamazoo, Traverse City, and even our friends up in Marquette. So the goal, I think, for us in Michigan is we need to, kind of accelerate, that density across a couple other of our geographies, and then as risk capital comes in, and we see some successes and exits, what can we do to incentivize more of that capital to come in and support our founders
So there's
that are demanding their
no, I completely align and agree with you, but we learned a couple other things that interesting to bring to this conversation, right? Remember, the point of this conversation is to open the
yeah
conversation about early stage investing as wide as possible. Listen, my office is in Birmingham. I'm sitting in the midst of Oakland County, some say in the capital of money in Michigan right now. And there's many, many, many individuals sitting in the sideline on capital, unlimited amount of it, and they're not playing in the ecosystem. So it's not just trying to attract people coming from outside to bring money to
yeah
Michigan, is how do you get the Michigan players to actually play? So we learned a couple things. True or false, I don't know, but we learned one. They don't know where to start. Most of them came from
yeah
family businesses, selling their businesses, third, fourth generation businesses. They're wealthy, they're comfortable, they don't know where to start. Some, when we talk about Birmingham Angels, say, wow, we didn't even know you guys here. So that's one. Two, the ecosystem in Michigan is pretty fragmented, right? So yes, there's
yep
development in Detroit and development in Grand Rapids and Southfield and Troy, and every city kind of tried to fight for their own piece in the ecosystem, but it's fragmented. It's not working as one dense ecosystem like you see in
yeah
Silicon Valley, New York, and other places. And the third one is that there's no visibility into what's happening in the startup ecosystem in Michigan. What I mean by that, if I know you and you send me your list every month about companies that going through things, I know, but there's no one place that I can go. By the way, I'm gonna throw a promo over here. We registered a domain called MichiganStart.com, and we're developing a portal which is going to be like the Michigan Start. Go to MichiganStart.com and you can see everything happening in our ecosystem. If I'm an investor looking for opportunities in Michigan, if I'm a startup company looking to connect to investors, unless you know somebody in the ecosystem, it's pretty fragmented. I mean, I hear about some companies that's happening in Michigan that through the grapevine, not because there's a
yep
visibility to it. So how and what do we need to do to solve some of those gaps, in your opinion?
I think in my opinion, it's you talk about visibility and awareness, right? We really need to celebrate, the things that are going on and promote those through as many channels, whether that's on social, through press releases, through, podcasts like this, right? That can get in front of those audiences. And then also, like you said, those family offices and others that are sitting on the sideline, like what are they going and that we can get them visibility to these different groups. It's easy to have your money sitting in some sort of fund that's giving you your 7, 8, 9% return or 5% return, and you're going to be fine. But in terms of that risk capital, yeah, how do we help incentivize them to want to get into the game and start playing?
So yeah, it's fundamentally finding a way to create maybe bridges between those different
Yeah,
mini ecosystem in Michigan and bring them all together. I mean, one of the things that I was always stunned by, you guys doing your own event every month, every other month. We're doing our events every month. Other groups doing their event every month. And my question was always, why not doing one big event and invite everybody together to look at all the companies, HardTech, SoftTech? I mean, do a whole day of pitching, all the
yeah.
investor groups coming together and do it, and get the traction that you're looking for instead of dragging this poor company from one group to another to do the same pitch over and over and over again.
Yeah, I think there's an opportunity to, honestly do both. You look at, successful ecosystems, whether you're going from, Boston to Chicago to San Francisco, even to groups like, over into Boulder and Denver, you have this density of activity so that if I'm an entrepreneur on any given night and I want to go to an event, I have to choose which event to go to,
Right,
right? There's a competition for my time.
right,
And so there's always this opportunity to connect, but you also do have these large tent pole events that can pull multiple people together
right.
across multiple, parts of the state. So I think it's an opportunity for us to say, okay, whether it's Michigan Tech Week, whether it's, some sort of investor conference, are these there are larger opportunities to bring individuals together to increase that, to aggregate, some of that demand, so to speak, increase, interactions. While we still should have these smaller regional activities, we need to kind of almost force the issue to get the regions and the other parts of the state to like you said, connect and collaborate, more seamlessly.
No, I completely agree with you that that should be a maybe a like you said, a regional or more smaller type of an event. But in the same time, when you talk about Michigan Tech Week or you talk about some of the larger conferences in town, those conferences, in my view, in my opinion, my experience, would not attract my members from Birmingham Angels to go to the Michigan Tech
Yeah.
Week. They're not going to go there. They will come here to the event that we're doing. The same thing with the other angel groups. So you're doing all those events. It's almost like great to have, and some medias and startup companies. But how much investors is attracting? Not much. And especially wealthy individuals have a tendency also not to be exposed themselves in a large event, kind of going to the big sign, I have a lot of money, come and ask me. So
Yeah.
they're very private. So they prefer not to be in a big crowd and kind of do that. So there's an opportunity, like I said, to collaborate. But I want to go back to HardTech. So what else do we need to do more of, to change, to add, to maybe do something that we're not doing in terms of promoting more visibility to HardTech?
Well, I think one thing that we can do more of, right, is have more conversations like this. But also for us on the Centropolis side, one thing we'll be doing this year is, interviewing and having similar engagements with our founders and highlighting our founders and their success and making sure they get as much visibility as possible. The other part is at the state level, right? We need to be able to promote, uh, our hard tech companies across the state and show those successes. And then also, similar to what we just did, at CES this year, what we'll be doing at NREL, at the Industry Growth Forum, is bringing delegations of Michigan hard tech companies out to other ecosystems to show off what we're doing. Our companies, that the 8 companies we had at CES, the response, to the success of that event for them has been tremendous. The number of connections, investors, and others that we were able to connect with them and now are interested in asking about Michigan has really kind of raised some eyebrows and caught the attention of the state. So hopefully we'll be able to show off and show up, at some of these other, domestic events, or even larger events, globally, as we move on, to highlight the successes here in Michigan, to give them that visibility, so that then all of a sudden, if a local investor sees one of our companies on the national news or in a publication or on a podcast that they listen to, it all of a sudden piques that interest of like, well, I didn't realize that was happening in Michigan, right? And almost you kind of takes that next step, and building some of that believability, and almost that FOMO, that you're missing out on something great that's happening in your backyard.
Yeah, I know, and I'm familiar with some of the companies that came out of Centropolis. I mean, I think we invested at least in one, two, or maybe three of them over time. The question then become, so when it's come to hard tech, you know, where do you see the state 5 years from now? With some effort like Centropolis and other organization, of course the Economic Development Organization, all of that, and how do you see the private sectors join that movement?
And so I think it's, one or two things here. So I think the piece that we want to do is we want to leverage, the existing infrastructure that exists in Michigan to help promote, the development and building of hard tech here. So incentives across the state to help build, whether it's commercialization districts, innovation excellence districts, whatever you want to call them, but being able to help aggregate that demand and capacity across our manufacturing sector, from talent to expertise to capital, to help support those early stage founders, so that they can build into great companies. And the second part to your point is like getting the attention, is if we start building those great companies, making sure that they're front and center, right, in these different regional hubs, or across the state, so that they can get some of that access to that capital, right? So we just need to really focus on being entrepreneur focused, helping them build the best companies so that they become investable. A lot of hard tech companies, don't know how to get from, they can get from 0 to 1 to building a prototype, but then becoming investable, much like other software companies. They sometimes lose their way because the amount of capital it takes is that much more. And so they need to really focus on being investment ready. So understanding all the things that go into building a great business, not just a great technology. So if we can build our ecosystems around supporting that, I think in 5 years, if we have more access not just to capital, but to all the resources that make making building things in Michigan, a competitive advantage compared to other states. We really need to hold that up and use that as kind of our marching order going forward. Okay, if you have a hard tech company or startup across the United States, the first place in your mind that you should look to develop it should be Michigan.
Right. And remember, in the spirit of Michigan, we as an investor, we have this filter called the driver, the car, and the race, right? You look at the driver, look at the car, look at the race. So we're not investing in hard tech, we're investing in hard tech founders, right?
Yep.
Which is a bit different things. But there was a discussion lately with few other parties that we connected to. Do you think it's a time, maybe it's the right timing right now to um, creating a hard tech venture fund that
I really do. Yeah, I really do think there's the opportunity to something like that. You've seen some success with groups, whether it's Cottonwood VC and their model, where they've deployed multiple funds or multiple versions of their fund across different geographies, with a thesis around hard tech and deep tech. And so I think having, a group of investors or LPs that have the understanding and patience, for longer term risk capital, that could be a great step forward, for the state of Michigan to get some more money into that. But, we need to really focus on having great investable companies so that those funds, right, that whether they're investing solely in Michigan or more broadly in the Midwest or outside, but with a Michigan bend, that they have companies that are able to be invested in.
okay? So you know, with that being said, um, what is the some maybe highlights or things that you want to underscore for people that listening that they need to know about hard tech and especially how Centropolis can help?
Yeah, so highlighting hard tech, when you're investing in hard tech, you're not just investing in a single founder, you're investing in an ecosystem. So money that goes to that founder then goes to contracts, to help, design, engineer, and build that. And the outflows, from that investment into the community and our local manufacturing base is immense. Just last year, Centropolis had, upwards of $25 million in contracts flow through, the companies that, we have invested in or are clients of ours. And that's all the way from contract manufacturing contracts to supplier contracts to design for engineering service contracts. Uh, and then in terms of about Centropolis, I think the big thing is just if you have any interest at all in hard tech, please reach out. We have a number of events. We have our Michigan Manufacturers Angels group. We're going to be supporting a number of other groups across the state. With our early stage idea to product program for early stage founders. So we're really trying to help promote hard tech development, not just from the investment side, but from that early stage, making sure that our founders are ready to create investable companies, and know that Michigan's ecosystem, we're really ripe to take advantage of a lot of the onshoring and reshoring activities and that reindustrialization activities that are going to be going on or have been going on. So we want to make sure that our ecosystem can take advantage of that, all the way from founders up the capital stack.
No, I got it. I appreciate it. And by the way, for anybody who's listening, would like to learn what's happening in Centropolis, you have something to offer Centropolis, you want to be involved in some way, you can look at the information on the screen here. You got Philip's name, the Centropolis website, and the phone number in case you want. And if you missed that one, you can contact us in our office. I mean, we definitely have the information to point it to. I appreciate you taking the time to come to the podcast. We still refining it and getting more focused and more intentional about certain things we want to talk about. I'm sure we're going to bring you again, to talk about it more. And we will select to showcase maybe some of the hard tech companies later down the road. But I do appreciate it, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Yeah, thanks a ton for having me, and look forward to chatting more. And we'll see you around the ecosystem.
Yeah, thank you, Philip.
Are you interested in becoming a member and joining our group? Please contact Jerron York by phone 248 981 6688 or visit our members' website by using the following QR code. We are looking forward to talking to you soon.